Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley.
And today we are joined by mystical life coach, Treloar Hocking, everybody.
Hey, Treloar. Welcome back.
I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. We knew that you were coming on this podcast, and you and I were speaking a little bit before you got on, because I thought that last night we had a live membership where basically every month people can go live with Rachel and mystical life coaches, and you will get a teaching every other Tuesday in each month. And last night was all about energetic entrainment. And at the end, when it was question and answer time, you shared something that I think is so relatable and so difficult, and yet it's something that is a part of our journeys as we grow, which is relationships change as we evolve, and it ain't easy.
Right. So, my gosh. Yeah, I was sharing last night that I noticed that a couple of really close relationships have started to change in my life. And these are relationships that I've had maybe my whole lifetime or most of my adult life. And these folks are dear to me, absolutely dear. The type of people you hope you're rocking in a rocking chair with, towards the end of your days. And just noticing how, as I evolve and change and grow, how it is actually affecting these relationships that I have. And what I was sharing was that I noticed when I showed up with each of them at different times, that the energy felt different. And I felt that all of a sudden, maybe for the first time, I was recognizing them projecting a program at me. And I remember the first time it happened with a girlfriend, I was like, what's happening? What's going on? I don't understand. This hasn't been in our relationship before. And so I just started to get really curious at, why did she say that to me? That's so weird. I've never had her put that energy out to me before. And so I just kind of, put it in my hat and went about my business. And then it happened again the next time we were together. And I was like, there it is again. And I started to go inward and just try to discern, am I showing up differently? Did I cause a trigger in her? What's going on with her maybe today that this would happen again? What's changed in our relationship? And I just kind of let that flow, that curiosity, that discernment flow, to see if it would happen again. And the next time we got together, there it was. And it was at that point where I thought, oh, shoot, I don't like this. This is somebody I expected to have in my life forever. And I do not like this. It has happened 3 times. It's definitely going to continue to happen. Do I have a responsibility to our relationship right now to do something, say something? Or do I just recognize that I've changed so much that our relationship has changed as a result? And so this was one of the things that I was bringing up last night, was I just tried not to get triggered myself, if you will, in that moment. And what I recognized last night was there was so much sadness that rose in me about this. And there was a lot of fear also, because I'm attached to this person, right? I'm so attached, I decided that we'd be rocking in rocking chairs together for the rest of our life. So what in me then needs to change as well, with regards to the way I look at this relationship. So yeah, I just wanted to start out the conversation by sharing that story. These things are real as we change.
Yeah, I mean, man, I've grieved so many close friendships. Me too, like girls that I thought I would ride or die with till the end of our days. And to see how fast things started to change as I began to evolve was heartbreaking in a lot of ways. You know, I had to grieve. And even though we're still friends, I know that it'll never be the same, you know, and I have these moments where I'm like, man, I didn't relish that last time together, you know, like when it was just like everything was exactly the same and we could laugh about the same things and we spoke the same language. And the moment that I started to shift, it was really sad. And it still makes me sad. And to see that, like, that amongst them, the only difference is that I'm not in that anymore has been, yeah, there's been a lot of grieving that I've had to do with all of that. But also knowing that, like, man, like, I wish I could take everybody to where I'm going. But the truth is that you can't. Right. And so the way that I show up in those friendships now is, I don't want to say it's a shell of who I used to be, but in many ways it is, because we're just not on the same wavelength anymore. And you know, there's not a blueprint or a book for like as you awaken, right, or as you evolve, like this is what's going to happen, so get ready for it. And so the demise of a lot of these friendships, or the letting go, and me letting go with love and honor and grace, has not been easy.
No, it is not. And I'll tell you too, like, one of the fears that I had, and this is going to sound really strange, everybody, but when I really stepped onto this path strong, and I was working with Rachel Fiori, you know, when we first got acquainted with each other, I remember going to her and saying, I have all this terror in my body right now. And I can feel the memory of it. It's so crazy just to talk about it. But I had this fear that, what if I became enlightened and I couldn't relate to anyone anymore? And I remember talking to her about it, crying about it actually. And she was like, you'll see as you evolve, Treloar, it isn't that you won't be able to relate to them, it's that they won't be able to relate to you. And that's what I'm seeing in a couple of my relationships. Like you said, Ellie, like we ride or die with these folks as long as we're within the same range, right? And you know, if interests change, it's pretty normal, you know, that people will veer off, and those are friends that aren't meant to be a lifetime. And you know, my attachment with these few people is that I had always expected them to be there, and I knew that, you know, my relationships would change with family as I changed, but I hadn't really, you know, resounded or to the fact that even these ride or die relationships would start to change around me. And as you said, we want to bring them with us, right? And so I'll continue to show up, you know, and honor me and my journey. And that's just part of this discernment process that I'm starting to figure out. It's like, when do I keep my mouth shut and not open the door of their projection because they don't understand and they're triggered? You know, and when do I actually share and honor their journey and all that? So, it is a trip.
Yeah. Could you go into that a little deeper? Because I think that's a beautiful talking point, and just break down what you mean by that so the listeners can understand.
What I mean by how I show up in the relationships differently.
Yeah, and you mentioned like having the discernment. So could you just go into like what it is you're discerning between, and when you feel that projection, you know?
I'll give you a good example. So one of the other members that, you know, is a family member who I absolutely cherish and adore. And we've had such an incredible relationship with each other, one of always being completely open and sharing. And it's my nature to be more sharing than hers, if you will. But always demonstrating that openness to her was a really great gift, I think. And she's such an incredible listener. And so, you know, we always had this great balance. And now when I share, it's a really triggering event for her. And so this is where I'd recognize, like, oh, that happened again. Like, you know, she's giving me unwanted advice, and it's advice that isn't actually in alignment with where I am. But because I've changed so much, she no longer knows where I am. And so the advice isn't wanted, number one, and it isn't able to be received because it's not what I need. And so for me to discern that particular instance is, do I stop sharing? Because I know if I do, I'm going to solicit that response from her. And it's the fact that we've changed so much from each other. Any response she has isn't going to be relative anymore. And so does that mean that our relationship changes? I get quiet around her as opposed to being somebody that used to be such an open sharer. So the discernment in that situation is really discerning what to bring up and what we can actually communicate about, so that I don't have to deal with the projection of the trigger in her because I've changed so much. And then I'm not frustrated as well, and dealing with that side of it for me. And so that's one specific way that I get to discern. And then I'll use another example. In the last couple of years through this journey, it was really evident to me that a childhood friend was somebody that I couldn't have in my life anymore. And it was that I needed to discern that the cost was too much for me personally to be in that environment. Isn't that interesting? And so again, there's that deep sadness of all the history we've shared together was there for me. And I needed to move through the fact that, with, like Ellie said, with love and grace and everything we can offer them, support from afar, the discernment is that I'm going to be really choosy what environment I put myself in with friends. So I just discern that too. With regards to, is it a group event and we can all be there together and that's great? Or is this person wanting me to be alone with them? And then my energy will come way down to be able to be in their environment. So those are the type of discernments that I have going on right now. And then I'll also say this too, like with my own adult children, I'm learning more patience in myself, if you will, and allowing myself to remain in truth when I'm around them, because there's so much history between us, the parent-child relationship, that there's a lot of opportunity for things to not be at the highest good for all of us. And so there's a lot of discernment there for me in this relationship now that I know, through the work that I've done, that someone's running a program at me, and that it's not my job to heal them, but what I can do is just show up in a loving way and not add to the problem. And so I hope that's helpful in certain ways that I discern how to navigate, the change in me that actually affects everyone around me. So I'm just trying to discern how best to achieve harmony in each situation, but still be authentic, and still be powerful.
Exactly. And I think, the mind really wants to know, oh, well, what's the right thing to do in this situation or that situation, right? And as you said earlier, Ellie, like, it would be great if we had a rule book or a playbook to go through of like, oh, then in my spiritual awakening journey, I'm going to experience this next. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is like, it's so nuanced, and every little interaction that we have with somebody, we are encouraged by our soul to show up maybe slightly differently. And like, where maybe in one moment it's like, yeah, I do need to actually share right now. In other moments, the more that we elevate, it's, this is what I'm working on. And Treloar, I know you're always working on the oversharing, right? This is one thing we have in common is, right now I need to hold my tongue. This isn't a moment I need to be blah, 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 blah. So it's really nuanced, that discernment piece, and I think it's easy to overlook when we're in our minds. And the more that we do this work about diving into our heart, that's where we are finding that discernment and the answers. So thank you so much for sharing all this so far. It's been great.
Yeah.
It's when you were talking, it's like every friendship there's a dynamic, right? And so one person shows up this way and the other person shows up that way, right? And so for me, one of my closest friends, our dynamic was that she was always saving me. So I would be drowning, I'd be cycling, and I'd be like in the depths of hell and like depression. And then here she comes with her super, man cape, and then be like, I'm here, let me swoop you off and let me fix you, right? And then when I started doing this work, I didn't need her anymore, right? Now I knew how to handle and feel and I knew what to do when all of the shit would hit the fan. And then all of a sudden, it's like we didn't know how to be friends anymore because that dynamic was now overthrown. That's dying. That doesn't exist anymore. So who are we now as friends, and what does this relationship actually look like? And to be honest, like, it's been 2 years and we're still not there. We're figuring it out, like, as the days go by. But it has not been easy for her because she was the savior, right? To have to shift gears and see, like, okay, what is actually this now that I'm not saving you at all times, which caused a lot of friction between us as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that if two people are really ready to tango, and be of presence and surrender and listening to one another, we can really create something beautiful and new. But it's hard when you have friends who are like, I don't know where you are and I'm not going there. I like where I'm at. And it's like, that's when it's like the goodbyes and the bow outs and the, man, like, the seasons you guys served me were amazing and I will miss you. And this is so hard and I don't want to let go, but I gotta go, because even if they decide one day to get to the next level, I may be 5 levels like ahead, right? And so, it's very nuanced, very, very tricky.
Treloar, have you had this experience? Because I know this is something Ellie has gone through. It's something that I've gone through with projection of friends onto Rachel Fiori and this work. And so it's almost like certain people don't want to hear. We've got up to this level and then they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear about anything to do with MSU or Rachel, because I can feel there's all of this projection that's going, because clearly it's like at a level, which I know Rachel used that explanation of like the octaves, it's out of their octaves. Right. And so it's like what it feels like is like the bullseye, the target just gets pointed at, the one who is triggering them, which is what happens in all the relationships, right? This happens. Ellie and I working through something this morning, and it's like things get triggered and our targets point at each other. And through this work, it's like, no, let's come back to ourselves, figure out what's going on here. But when someone's at a lower level of consciousness and they're being triggered by someone or something, they just unconsciously point. And then in my case, certain friends like don't want to connect or have anything to do with this part of my life, which is difficult because it's such a big part of my life. And have you had any of those experiences?
I have, yeah. I definitely have a couple of people who I'd grown with in other organizations, other teacher trainings, if you will. And so it was really shocking to me when I started to evolve in this way, that they weren't interested in hearing about it. They weren't interested in participating with me. And we participated in evolutionary activities for years together, planned things, events, done things together. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, no, I'm going to stay with this right here. Why do you need to go away from that? This is just fine. So I've definitely experienced that. I've also experienced another really, really cool person in my life. I wouldn't say forwardly rejected Rachel, but definitely mama beared me about Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you spending so much time doing? And are you sure this is where your attention should be? And I don't like the fact that you're over there in that group, doing those activities so much. And so it's just really interesting. I was like, wow, watch that. Look at this program that's being projected at me right now, as in Treloar's mine. Right? Yeah. Like, don't go away from me. I've got an attachment to you, and this isn't something that I'm willing to share with you. So, but I want to keep you here. And so that's just been interesting. We still have a relationship. It's just something I'm aware of. I haven't poked the bear, so to speak, about it. It's all good. I mean, that's their journey, and just trying to honor that's the way they're showing up, because it hasn't been too effective, with our relationship. And so when I find myself frustrated about it, I'm like, well, you've chosen not to poke the bear. Do you want to have an honest and authentic conversation about this yet? Right. And again, that attachment that I have to that relationship would keep me from poking the bear. So it's been real evident to me lately about my attachment issues with these people that I have so much value for.
And then in comes this, discernment piece that you brought up earlier. It's like, well, yeah, sometimes that's the best thing to do, is to have that powerful conversation and sit down and let's get real and let's talk about what's really going on here. Other times, that's not always necessary.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I, as you said earlier, it's like word honoring. It's like, I see where they're at. I can feel the projection. It's not causing me any harm. It's like, do I need to unearth everything? Maybe not. Maybe I can just honor where they're at and love them from this place, and just allow the relationship to continue to grow in whichever way. And then obviously if the projection stops, well, that's the discerning time to go, oh, hang on, I just want to bring this to light, let's talk about this. But
yeah, it was a good question. I love it. But the answer is definitely yes.
I mean, as we're all learning, like the higher and higher we all go, like that target gets put on you, because it's, as you become more light, you're shining the light on the darkness, and that darkness is now coming to the light. It's being seen, and so it's illuminating, just like this white shirt that I've got on today. It's looking really
We're all in white today.
Yeah, we're all illuminating, and it's bringing out that darkness. And it's, those programs have no choice but to come out and jump on and join the train and be seen. And this is something that Ellie sees constantly in her social media. The more that she kind of posts the videos of light, the trolls jump on, the darkness comes out. And I feel like it, in this playbook that you're going to write, Ellie, I foresee you writing this playbook about awakening and ascension. It's part of the journey is being okay with people are going to project on you, people are going to come for you, that target's going to be on your back, and you've got to be ready for it with an open heart of love.
Yeah, and yes, we expect this with family, right? That's a given. But friends are families that we choose, right? And so that's why it's so hard. That's why it's so hard, because these are people that you're like, no, I want you in my life, and I love you, and I love spending time with you, and I love our relationship. And then you never expect it to ever change or to ever become what it becomes. Mm-hmm. And I still haven't fully navigated yet. Like I went through this period of my journey where I was like, okay, I've changed too much. I'm going to shut everyone out. And then I literally deleted all friendships. And then all those friendships came back. They're like, what did you just do? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I got scared. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe that's what I have to do because no one's telling me what I have to do. But I just know that I'm really different and nobody gets me. And I don't know what to do but to back away and isolate myself. And that was a mistake. And that's something that I had to learn. And so I had to have a lot of conversations with people of being like, I'm sorry that I did that. I don't really know how to navigate all of this. There's a lot of changes within me and I don't really have anyone to talk to. And so the thing that I thought that I had to do was just cut everyone off. And that's going to the extreme side of the pendulum. And so I ended up speaking and having really beautiful conversations with everybody. And even though we're not as close as we are, there is definitely a respect there. And, I had one of my really closest friends when I started my awakening. She was like, so let me get this straight. She's like, is Jesus your number one or not? And I was like, no, I'm my number one because I am Jesus and Jesus is everybody and we are one, right? And she could not handle that or deal with that. And she was like, that's not good. That's not right. That's wrong and all of these things. And it's like, man, I can't, where you are is beautiful for you, but I can't walk that path for you or have you make me think or believe what you want me to believe and think because that makes you comfortable. I'm not here to play that game. And so I honor you. If Jesus is number one, cool. He's right next to me along with everybody else. And so, because I grew up super religious. And so all of that and all of the friends I have in that really, in a lot of ways, I had to, bow out of because I just don't believe in any of that. And I don't want to be forced to believe in any of that.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I definitely had a friend who was like, "You're in that now, and I'm going to ship you a bunch of books of who you should be listening to." It was really interesting. And then I wouldn't say broke up with me as a friend, but removed any responsibility that I have with them as a friend as a result of, I'm like, yep, I'm number one. We're all divine. We're all the same. We're all one. And people don't get it. Some they don't get it until they know. And also listening to you, one of the things that I thought of is that one of the beautiful things that we're learning in this evolution towards oneness is to understand that where they're at is okay. That it isn't my job to convince it, it's not my job to carry them along.
Mhm.
It's my job to continue to evolve myself. And as Danny said, shine that light, that white light outward and let other people find their way. Do I want to encourage them? Do I want to, share what I know and uplift them? Hell yes, if that's what they desire. And it's an equal partnership in that, if you will. Like, I'm not imposing or projecting, and there isn't neediness, if you will. Like, if it's just this honest thing, and all of this is another way for us to understand ourselves. It's to understand unconditional love. It's to honor our path, it's to honor their path, and all the ways of oneness. Just in this instance that we're talking about today, as we evolve, our relationships change. It's such a beautiful lesson in unconditional love for me, right? To love myself in the process, that it's okay that I still have attachments to my friends, like
Yeah.
it's okay that I thought I would be in a rocking chair with some of these people at the end of my life, or that I want to have glorious relationships with family members. Like, it's okay that I have desired that in the past, and that I'm learning to release the attachment, because in the releasing of that attachment, that's where the love is.
Yeah.
For myself, the attachment causes suffering, right? As I had shared with you guys earlier, my, phone call conversation with, like, I'm freaking the hell out. Rachel Fiori, what if I become so evolved that I'm alone?
Yeah.
So if I didn't have that fear, I wouldn't have these attachments. You see that? And it's exactly the opposite. As I evolve, I become more one. That is the least alone I would have ever been.
It's the whole separation, right? We're in separation consciousness, right? And then we start elevating. We start, oh my God, the more I elevate, the more separate I'm going to become. And actually, it's the opposite. It's just being filtered through our programs of separation. And the more that we do heal, like, oh, I have the power to now love everyone's stuff, right? I can love this family member that's showing up in very unloving ways right now. I can understand. I can give them compassion because I know what pain this program that they're being very unloving right now is coming from, and I can still offer my love to them, whatever that might look like in that moment. And you mentioned the word convince, and I'd love to talk about this because this idea of convincing has been coming up a lot recently. And we have to convince when we don't truly know. And this is something that I've been sitting with. Whenever I get in that energy of having to convince somebody, it's because there's a part of me that's not fully secure in what it is I'm saying. And this happened recently with a family member who started talking to me about my path and this work. And I kept on saying, I'm not here to convince you. And then I would feel the energy and I would start, and I would catch myself and be like, I'm going into that convincing energy again. Isn't that interesting? I had to reel it back in, come back to myself. And in doing that, it allowed the person I'm having this conversation with to make the shift too and be like, really? Like, okay then. And it created this beautiful space for me to honor her feelings and her beliefs and what she was thinking, and me to take it all in and understand it. and then not go into, but let me convince you why you're, or as I started to go into that, then to reel it back and be like, oh, I don't need to do that right now, because I know in my heart, I know the truth. And so let me just sink deeper into that. And then that allowed the energy dynamic to completely shift in this conversation. And that creates the space for true connection, because then it's like, I can have my perspective, you can have your perspective, we can differ, and that's fine. Whereas in the past, it would have been like butting heads, each other trying to convince each other what was right, what was wrong. And this was like a case point example of like, oh, the more you heal, the more you elevate, it actually frees up the space for true connection. And obviously therein comes all of the ways that I used to connect in the past, which was probably more from shadow and wounding, where I was just people pleasing, or I was trying to convince people of what I believe, instead of just honoring where they're at and their journey and knowing the truth in my heart and connecting from a place of divinity. And that's always where I want to connect from now moving forward. Not say that's going to happen. I've got lots of programs to work on still, but
I love that you shared that. Yeah, and I'll say, oh, go ahead, Ellie.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the stories that I shared earlier with a family member where she was such a good listener and I'm such a good oversharer, that was the dysfunction that our relationship was built on, was that I needed to whine and cry about something and she was willing to receive it and then give advice. And then all of a sudden I'm healed enough where I don't want the advice and now we have a problem. Right. And so in that, what I recognized was, me just allowing her to still think she needs to give advice and just let it fall in between us. I didn't need to pick it up, but she just doesn't know that yet, that's not something. And then I could say to her, like in the way of connection, just like really be open. And I'm like, yeah, I heard what you said, and I'll let you know when I'd love your ideas to help solve this. Otherwise, I'm just going to navigate this on my own. And that was a really different space for us to be in, and then there's a little catch-up game on her side. But, just allowing, like I said, knowing when she gives advice, just to smile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't have to say anything. Yeah, just hear it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's really hard for me right now when it comes to new friendships. Like, it's not like I have all these friends that are coming into my life, but, the people that I'm really closest to right now are people of, masters of self. Like, we spend a lot of time on Zoom together and all those things. And it's been hard for me to make friends in this world of spirituality, right? Let's just say that. Because it's like we enter in thinking that like we're going to be on the same like wavelength and understand each other. And the difficult thing that I've ran into is like I start making friends in this world and I'm realizing like there's a lot of like bypassing and there's a lot of like positive vibe stuff and there's a lot of things that I don't align with, which then makes me just not want to like continue this friendship. And that's something that I still haven't conquered, where I just meet them where they're at and that's cool. But it's like I think that because I'm in the thick of my healing journey, it's like you guys probably understand, like more aware you become of your programs, the more aware you become of other people's, and then it's so hard for me to sit there and like close my mouth and not say or whatever, and not giving advice but being like, hey, I'd love to like let you see this, or like what you can't see is what it, and it's like that's not my job, number one. But then number two, it makes me feel like then I can't really just be open and expressive and say what I feel or what's on my mind. I constantly finding myself like just closing. So like they'll like for example, like I made this new friend and I was going through a hard time and she was basically like telling me like what affirmations to say about the fact that I wasn't safe, that I didn't feel safe, that my inner child didn't feel safe. And I had to sit there, right? And I was battling the whole time of like, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? And then I finally was just like, like that's great, but like my inner child doesn't feel safe. For me to tell the inner child like you're safe when it doesn't feel safe is not honoring that she doesn't feel safe. Like I have to honor that she feels unsafe. And she was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess. But it's like when that's constantly happening, then what I find myself is like, I'd rather just not have the friendship, because right now it's just so difficult for me, which is maybe like I'm running a powerless program, but I'm not at this place yet where it's easy for me to just flow and be present and be cool and like be in my power and say whatever. I'm still in this pace where like I need you to be where I'm at. And if you're not, then I can't do this, which is a lot of programs there. Yeah.
No, I feel you for sure. It's a whole nuance, right? We show up in different ways every day, right? We're never the same person. And so you can be really powerful one day just naturally because that's what's going on, and then be in front of somebody and be like, oh crap, there's all that stuff. And one of the things Rachel says is, if we're not in 100% peace ourselves, there's always work to do. And I think what I'm learning here, and like what you said, Ellie, was there's always stuff there for us to do, and just to recognize that as I'm noticing, as I evolve, my relationships change. It's just another beautiful layer of growth for me, right? To just witness and get curious and notice the points of entry that I get delivered to me from those experiences, and go in and honor them for what they are. And what will that get me? It will get me more evolution. It will get me more freedom. And to remember that it doesn't get me loneliness, which is what my really, really strong pattern said, that it actually gets me to more connectivity, right? And it doesn't seem apparent. That's what's wild in this 3D paradigm that we're trying to navigate. It doesn't seem that we're connected. It seems actually the opposite, but it isn't true. And eventually, they'll be with us. The right, when people are ready, they'll be with us. And for me, just to say, it's such a humbling thing to be somebody that's blazing that path in my own life, right? And the life in front of the people that know me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
it's an honor, and it's so fucking tough.
Yeah.
It is tough.
So tough. Yeah. I remember Fiori had this one line that she said in the class of, because I think we all struggle with not wanting to be alone. That's something that we're actively healing, right? And for me, like, loneliness is huge. And she said, I have my divinity. I have divinity flowing through me. Why would I ever be alone? Exactly. And that really hit me. And I was like, whoa. I was like, let me get there, because the loneliness thing keeps me trapped in victim consciousness. It keeps me trapped in all of these other programs. And to be able to one day be like, no, divinity lives within me. Like, this is it. Like, I've got it all. I mean, I cannot even imagine what that feels like, but it sounds rad. Like, it sounds fire.
And that's what the tears were. It's like such a humbling thing to think that that's what's waiting, right? Is to just have to, just to know that there's oneness there, and that's all there is. Like, that's really humbling to even fathom. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, we always say, Treloar, you cry when you're speaking truth. If we had a yearbook, that would be what's under your name. You feel it,
my quote. Yeah, absolutely. And you can never get a podcast or any kind of class without me shedding a tear.
It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. To anyone out there, if you're going through this, just know, like, it's okay. Honor what this is. I had a period too where, I wanted to like bring everybody up and like change everybody and all this stuff. And I had to learn a lot of growth through that, and to understand and know, like, we're all individual souls having our own individual journeys, and it may be difficult, but it's through the difficulties and the trials and the tribulations where, the greatest growth spurts happen. And so just honor what is and love yourself as you move through relationships, changing as you evolve.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, Ellie.
Yeah. And I think it's easy. This is the way I see it. It's easy to kind of, when you start doing this work, to get to start creating separation, of being like, well, there's this world and there's the spiritual world, and I'm now in the spiritual world, and I think it's definitely a phase I went through. And then the more that you heal and authentically elevate, you realize, oh no, there's one world and we're all on it. And to be spiritual means that you understand that everything and all life is all connected at all the same time. And then we arrive at a place where it doesn't matter whether someone is on the same path as you. This is like basically what we're talking about this whole podcast, right? It's that your perspective, your level of consciousness changes, but you eventually arrive at the place of, oh, we're all one. I can connect, as long as I'm connected to my divinity. As you said, Rachel's always got divinity. It's always right there. As long as we can connect to that place and then connect to every single human being on the planet from that place, it doesn't matter if someone is on the spiritual path or just a backpacker in Nepal, Tibetan monk, or wherever they're from in the world, can still connect from our divinity and that divine place. And I feel like that's the path we're all on. And whether it's a family member or a close friend or somebody that we meet at the gas station, it's all the same. It's let me connect to my divine self and my divinity first. And once I'm there, I can connect with whom I choose. That doesn't mean we're going to connect with everyone, right? And we're going to want to spend a bunch of time with all these different people. But the more that we elevate and truly awaken, that separation, that kind of falls away. And it gives us the freedom to still have these relationships with those who continue to choose to be in them. And that is obviously a drastically different thing, because as we mentioned, as we elevate, it changes. You've changed, and therefore their projections onto you, their perceptions of who you are, are they holding on to an old version of you? Is that why there's friction in this relationship? And if it is, that's going to be a hard time for them. They've got to let that version of you die, just as you did.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that we can be conscious of in this process, as the three of us are recognizing relationships changing around us, is to make sure that we stay in our divinity as much as we can, because it's such a beautiful gift, not only to ourselves, but to everyone around us. It is a beautiful gift to those friends, especially if they're feeling discomfort about them noticing the change or not noticing the change, but feeling, the suffering because of the change. When we hold that divinity, it's a gift to us both, because it will help. Whether or not they know it does or not, it will help. Yeah, it will. Yeah. So for us just to get stronger in that, and that's what I was, the point I was trying to convey is like, it's an incredible opportunity to continue to evolve, when these instances are there, and the beauty of it is just keep divine, anchoring into it and growing within it and evolving within it. It gives everyone else permission when they're ready to do the same.
Beautiful. Yeah. What a way to end.
To everyone at home, if you're interested in working with Treloar or any of our other amazing mystical life coaches, Master of Self University, to do the deep transformational work, you can set up a free coaching consultation with us to learn how to work with us one-on-one or join a group class. Check out Rachel's book, Mason's Way, The 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, taught by the Spirit of an Enlightened Dog, on Amazon. And there's also a digital course called The Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness. And join our free Discord community, y'all, because we get to chit-chatting on there about everybody's programs and what they're moving through. So we're creating a community for us to all share and express and, help each other as we ride this crazy ride.
Yeah, and thank you to both of you for all that you do in these podcasts. They're so awesome. I love watching and listening to everybody share, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Treloar. Like, share, subscribe, share anything around. It really helps us do this this podcast for free. And thank you guys for being here. We love you so much. And until next episode, we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.